Greetings, brothers and sisters. I got a bunch of stuff to get to today. Important sort of, it's every other day. A bunch of like crap out there. I got a bunch of, headlines and things. Some of it may be significant, I don't know. But I wanted to do a little introduction. So, a lot of the so called truth community exists on fear. It's fed by fear. And there's a lot of right wing people. This was the Alex Jones model is something that is generated by fear of what the left and Biden or what the controllers, Illuminati, or whatever group you attribute to what's going on is going to do to you and your lifestyle and all your freedoms and all these things, right? And so it's just always hitting the panic button, the sky is falling. And people in the so called truth community give way too much power and credit to the people I call the controllers. They feel like the controllers do whatever they want. They call them the elite or whatever you call them, right? They do whatever they want without any sort of spiritual consequences. And all their plans, all the things that they want to get done, magically occur. And that's not true at all. In fact, they suffer more disappointments and more setbacks in their agenda. And I've seen it over and over again. I see what they want to do, like I see what their plans are, and I see them failing time and time again to get that done. I saw the same thing with Trump. You hear, Trump and Biden have their plans, right? And every president, and I'm not talking about the presidents having real power here, but the presidents come in and they lay out an agenda. The whole New World Order thing was laid out by Bush, for example, and they don't even say that anymore, right? Biden said New World Order, Bush said New World Order. Why did they stop saying it? Because they lost the battle on that. They lost the battle over the term New World Order. And so the agenda keeps on being rolled out time and time again, and Americans and people of the world don't accept it the way that they want them to, and there's just things that happen that keep that keep pushing back against their agenda. But one of the things I say here, I don't know if anybody else is saying this, right? In terms of the truth community, I know in the past nobody was saying this, but I've been saying this for years. Fixing the beast or the system is not an option that's on the table. Saving the system, right? And I say it over and over again. I think people, whatever. Like, everyone's got to figure this thing out for themselves. But in terms of the options on the table, there is going with the controller's agenda and having the system eventually collapse. There is not going with the controller's agenda and having the system eventually collapse. But what's not on the table in either case is that going with the controller's agenda and they save the system and everything is great. Like, that's not an option. And the other thing is, like, people think, Trump gets elected or whatever happens, maybe that's part of it, maybe it's not, or whatever it might be. But the idea here is, and it's on the left and it's on the right and it's, in the middle and everywhere in between, right? Where the people rise up and they seize power from the controlling system. They kick out the controllers or the lead or whatever you want to call them. They restore justice. They restore, sound economic principles, and everything is good again. Like, everything goes back to, everyone can retain their lifestyle and retain whatever it is. And that's not an option either. There's no option on the table of saving the system. The controllers can't be pressured and say, oh, these guys aren't going to do it. They're not going to go with our agenda. We're going to back off. We're not going to push it through. They have no choice. They know. See, there is when you have a flim-flam pyramid scheme type of economy that's based in illusion, a debt-based economy, a usury economy. I mean, it's all of these things, right? It's all of these bad things wrapped up together, all these various ways of scamming, these financial scams. I mean, there's really wealthy people on Wall Street in the banking community, the people that, control the, economic aspect of our lives, that have all these financial schemes where they're able to get, billions of dollars in wealth, these hedge funders and all these people, by doing nothing. They're not, creating anything economically. They're not having factories or not having, They're not, doing anything to bolster the economy in the material world. They just have these financial schemes, these mathematical schemes, these flim flam, man, these con schemes in which they're able to create lots and lots of wealth for themselves quickly without running a business, without, contributing in any way. I mean, that's our economy, and that's the downfall of our economy. And if you understand this, like in any pyramid scheme, any Ponzi scheme, there's a period where the scheme collapses. And these snake oil salesmen, right? Like Trump is a snake oil salesman, and their schemes collapse. Trump's a con man. He's a salesman, right? He sold something to people, and he didn't deliver. In fact, he delivered the opposite to them. They pushed more of the agenda. The agenda is kind of slowed down on most levels. Joe Biden has the presidency. I mean, the Democrats have the presidency. They have, pretty much everything but the Supreme Court. They have both houses, and they had all the momentum from really slamming Trump and all the anger towards Trump going into the election, right? Going into the Biden presidency post-election. And they haven't done nearly as much as they wanted to do. He signed some executive orders. They pushed some COVID stuff. And they've, done some bailouts and things. And they're, ringing up the debt. So they've had some things. They're going to walk away with a fortune in these various scams they're running right now. And so, yeah, they're going to get some money, and they're doing some bad things. But most of their agenda is slowed down now that they don't have Trump, right? If you're a Trumper, because, I know there's no Biden people here, at least I think there's very few, if any. If you're on one side of the left-right paradigm, if you're still thinking there's really a difference in the Republican and Democratic Party, not in their platform, not in their personalities, but in who controls them and what their true mission and agenda is, if you still think there's a difference, then why isn't Trump in jail? Why isn't Hillary in jail, right? Like, if you think there's a real difference, that these guys aren't, working together, the Democrats and the Republicans, and aren't controlled by the same people, then why isn't Trump in jail? Now, I watch a lot more mainstream liberal media than most people because I covered it here. But it was, not a lot in terms of watching whole shows. It was watching a couple of minutes of MSNBC and CNN and scrolling around the internet. And even in that short period of time for the past 4 years, 5 years, the left-leaning media said over and over again, Trump was a criminal president. And once he wasn't president, they talked about him being prosecuted on a state level in New York State and then on a national level. And they're saying he's responsible for an insurrection on January 6th, and that's also criminal. And all these news pundits and a lot of the Democratic officials talked about Trump being a criminal. They impeached him twice, and they wanted to go after criminal charges. And now they're investigating Trump, Trump organizations and Trump friends and Trump employees and, the Trump empire. But Donald Trump isn't, nothing's going to happen to him. And that's proof that Donald Trump is, they need him. They need Donald Trump. If they put Donald Trump in jail, the left-leaning media would lose about 70% of their content. They're still living in 2020, like, the stuff with Cuomo's and Trump, right? And so if they lost Trump, their agenda, they wouldn't be able to push their agenda, and the crazy Trumpers and all the people, right? Trump is, their straw man. They need Trump, right? And so your right-wingers should realize this. They have all the power. They have corrupt courts. Trump Trump was doing shady stuff. Like, every day they talk about things that he did that were like basically illegal on these shows. And yet there's no, Trump going to jail. And if they did it, if they end up arresting him and they end up, trying him, it'll go on for like years, right? Like, Trump won't see the inside of a jail cell as long as, he's useful to them. And that should tell you on the left everything you need to know, that they need Trump if you're a left person, because why didn't they put Trump in jail? And you could say the same thing about Hillary if you're a Trump person. When Trump ran in 2016, about 70% of his platform was about crooked Hillary. He called her crooked Hillary. And he said to her in a debate, she said, well, it's a good thing you're not president. He said, yeah, if I was, you'd be in jail, right? Lock her up was the mantra. And then as soon as the election was over, Trump said, no, because he was going around on a victory tour. I mean, I covered this. I showed the video clips. And Trump was, in this victory tour, and they were yelling, lock her up. And he said, no, that played during the election, but now we don't care about that. He didn't care about locking Hillary up anymore. Joe Biden hasn't talked about locking Trump up anymore. Like, he's not talking about prosecuting Trump. They need him, right? They need him out there. They need to use him as a reason for their agenda and the media coverage and all the rest of it. Same thing with Hillary, right? And so Trump vowed to clean up the swamp. And why didn't he have one investigation to Hillary? I mean, he talked about her criminal exploits, his whole, candidacy. Why not one investigation? Why not investigate Hillary, after he was president? And if cleaning up the swamp, Hillary is the swamp. You know who else is the swamp? Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's laptop, Hunter Biden's relationships, Hunter Biden smoking crack, and the corruption, selling influence, and these things, all the stuff that happened in the Ukraine and things like this. All the entitlements of being a career politician's son, a vice president's son, and now president's son. And the right wing never went after him. And, Fox News never went after him. I mean, nobody did. I mean, just the comedians in general. Because it's a controlled system. The people who are in the mainstream system have a narrow bandwidth of what they can do and what they can't do. And they are completely controlled, all of them, right? And so the fact that Hillary was never investigated and never went to jail, and the fact that Trump isn't being, they're slow walking any sort of criminal procedure against him. He was impeached twice and still made it through. They did these things, formal things, formality, right? Because they're working together, right? They need to, generate anger and hatred and fear for the opposite party. That's the binary system. That's the left-right paradigm. That's why it exists, to keep you engaged with the system and believe that there's a solution out there. There's a bad guy in Joe Biden, or there's a bad guy in Donald Trump, and there's a good guy in Joe Biden or a good guy in Donald Trump, depending where your loyalties lie. And the Republicans are good, or the Republicans are evil, or the Democrats are good, or the Democrats are evil, all based in what demographic you fall into. And it keeps you engaged in the system, and you believe, like, all right, if I vote, it's going to change things, and we can get rid of, whatever it is, right? Get rid of the bad guys and put the good guys in. And, they're all working together. They're not, they're all scamming you, right? Like you saw the movie The Sting, right? They appear to be working in an oppositional way. Robert Redford and Paul Newman seem to be, enemies to the people they were conning, because, and that's the Flim Flam Man, it's a movie I've seen like 3 or 4 times. George C. Scott, these old movies that talked about confidence games. They're well worth watching. And there's a period of time, and you can see it in that Wolf of Wall Street movie, because that's basically a Ponzi scheme. There's another movie called The Boiler Room. These are about, or you can look at any of these other, these financial movies I talk about all the time that are really well done. Margin Call and The Big Short. And they're all scams. They're all flim-flam Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes. And there's a period of time where the thing falls apart. And that's where we are in our whole economy. When they can no longer fake it anymore. When, everyone's demanding their money, right? In a pyramid scheme, I had some friends, like friends of friends in college, that got involved in a pyramid scheme. And then, years later, when I moved to New Mexico from the Northeast, so I'd never been really in the West before. And I had become a trainer for the Heartfulness System. I went to India, my first trip to India. And it took me a long time to find a job in New Mexico. It was a very odd situation. And so I was like bored out of my mind. And I was just looking through the want ads. And I saw this, want ad. Are you a sports-minded person? It was like this way it was written. I knew it was a scam. And I was so bored. I'm like, all right, I'll go check it out, right? And so it was this place. I went into this like warehouse, and they made it look elegant. Like they painted the walls black, but I can tell it was a cheap place to rent, right? Like some sort of like almost like a storage facility. It was like in a storage facility area. Like, there's these parts of the town that are industrial and the hotels are really crappy. And, you'll see this in every city. There's a part of the city that, is business oriented, but it's the sort of, it's the places, it's the facilities where they distribute things, the distribution facilities, the shipping facilities. They have like a front, a front office that's on the nice part of the city, and then they have the place where the freight the freight train tracks are, and where all it's just kind of dingy there, and this is where this place was. And so what they did was they painted the walls black, and they had these sort of elegant like lighting, and it was very open. It was very they had like one room where they showed videos, and they had these individual cubby holes, but everything could be packed up like quickly. They had these paintings on the wall, but they just back up a U-Haul, and they could get out of there in about with 4 or 5 people that work there. They could get out of there like within an hour, or just leave all the stuff there if they had to get out of the state quickly, right? And so they showed a video, and they were selling water filters. It was a water filter company, but they had all these products, all this different types of merch. And, they had this guy who ran the company, and they had him with Ted Danson. Like Ted Danson gave an endorsement to this guy, right? Because he paid him a bunch of money. Some other celebrities. And they were on yachts, and all these salespeople were on these parties that he was throwing. And he showed you, he showed you his wealth. This is my documentation of my success as a businessman. And he had all these, Lamborghinis and all this, stuff, right? Very completely fake and, not like believable. I'm laughing like I'm, trying to not to laugh, right? Because I can see this is going to end up being a pyramid scheme. And then they have a pitch, and they say, if you come in as a manager, that's how you make your money. And when my friends had done my friends of friends had done the pyramid scheme, it was always $5,000. That bought you into the pyramid scheme. You put $5,000 into the pyramid, and then you got all your friends and family to put in $5,000, and you were pushed through the pyramid, right? And eventually what happens is people run out of, friends and family because they all, know each other, to get money to push people through the pyramid. As you get more and more people behind you, more and more people that you sign up that push you up a rung in the pyramid, and they get their family, and you get credit for anybody you brought in who they bring in, right? So eventually you're pushed up through the top of the pyramid, and then you get a payout. Then you get like a big chunk of money, like 25 grand or something like that. But you have to bring in all these people to do it. And eventually they run out of people. People start wanting their money back. Family and friends start fighting over this, right? Realizing they got scammed, all these things. And the cops or the media, local media might start getting involved. And so they pack up the warehouse and they get out of there, right? And so, they have this pitch, and they say, you can come in as a manager, right? So I sit down with, they sign you to a guy. This guy's like, I had a crappy job, but now I'm so positive. I come into work positive every day. I bought in as a manager, and, it's been the best thing. And I'm like, aren't you supposed to be paying me? Like, what kind of job is it that you have to get a managerial position, you have to pay them, right? Like I'm trying to keep a straight face. I'm like, this almost sounds like a pyramid scheme. The guy's like, no, what are you talking about? Now he's worried I'm a cop or something, right? And so, and I just, the whole thing was, you could just see it was a scam. But the important part to this video about my experience with this is that they could pack up at any moment, grab all their shit and get out of there in the drop of a hat. because, that's how these economic, scams work. These flim flam man, these snake oil salesmen, they come into a town and they sell some sort of miracle concoction, right? Snake oil, and they say, hey, you take this, your health issues will go away, but it's just, it's a nerd. It has nothing in it, medically, right? And so, it has some medicinal taste or whatever it is. And so people start realizing it doesn't do what the person who sold it to them said it did. And so they got to get out of town, right? They got to, it's collapsed. It's a confidence game, and people lose confidence. They're selling confidence. And that's what our economy is. It's a confidence game. And they're selling, like you believe that the dollar is valuable because they've sold that to you. But it's not, because it's not backed by anything. It's only backed by the promise of a corrupt, degenerate government. And it's not the government, it's the people that run it. And so, in banks, banks that don't have any money in them, banks that don't have enough, resources, they can't, all they have is the same digital paper money. They don't have any, gold to back the dollar. They don't have any value to say, all right, we're going to, and that's how currencies used to be, that you have gold, that you could go reclaim your gold from the government. You turned in your paper certificate and you could get some gold, right? You get the gold value of your dollar bill. But now that's not the case, right? We have a promise to pay, a fiat currency. And so I've explained this so much, so many other people have explained it. But there's a point where the confidence collapses. People's confidence in the scammers, in the system collapses. And that's happening because of the truth community and because, like various entities, like, there's the part of the movie Margin Call where the guy who runs the brokerage firm says, they realize they have too much risk on their books and they're going to collapse. So they sell all their crappy derivatives. They just dump it, 60% of what it's worth. Like they just sell everything. They're just all sell. And they gut the company. They fire most of the people, and their reputation's been ruined. And it's a fictional story, but it's based in what happened in 2008 in the crash on Wall Street. Somebody realizes that they got to sell their worthless derivatives. All the, there's like a quadrillion dollars worth of derivatives or more out there. And these are just financial instruments that are all scammy and they're all, it's a scam, right? It's just, there's nothing backing. They have no value. They're debt. And so you have all these big financial institutions holding on to the dollar, like, China has like, trillions of dollars of just the dollar, right? People, stock away currencies or whatever it is. And they don't want to get caught with worthless digital, not even paper anymore, but digital wealth. People realize, I'm going to get out of Bitcoin or whatever it is, or the stock market or whatever it might be. They realize it's going to crash. And so they have to put it into something tangible or real, and it becomes, land and things like this, whatever it might be. And you see that now, right? And so the agenda they're running right now is that they can no longer prop up the system and they can't deliver to you the lifestyle that you think you're entitled to. And you either accept their deal and watch the system collapse and give up your whatever it is, freedoms and all your entitlements and things, and the thing still collapses, or you resist it and the system collapses faster. Those are the two choices, right? You either go along with it or you resist it, and either way the outcome is the same. There's no version of what's going to happen where the system is saved. It just isn't available. It's the time in the Ponzi scheme or the pyramid scheme, the confidence game collapses. The confidence in the system collapses. And everything you're seeing right now is them trying to deal with it. And you could say how evil they are for, they didn't create, the people, people who are in charge of the system now. This happened years and years ago, the financial system. Back in, it was 1913, I think it is, when they created the Federal Reserve, and they took this Ponzi scheme to another level, right? And then they had these, privatized banks that controlled these various countries, right? We have the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank that controls the money, and we went from a gold standard to a fiat currency. This happened, in the 40s. They had this, the Bretton Woods. I mean, I talk about these big events that decisions were made, like the Council of Nicaea. They were these, these events, these conferences where powerful people get together and they make decisions. Yeah, that all happened. But people embrace the lifestyle, right? We're all carrying around cell phones, right? We're all on the internet. We're not, everyone has flat screen TVs and, running hot water, and goes to the supermarket and, gets the nicest vehicle they can get, whatever it is, the nicest house. All of us bought into the system. We all lied to ourselves. Our grandparents and our great-grandparents lied to themselves about what they were getting into, ignored the signs, looked at the flashy front of the office building without looking at what was behind it, right? Whatever it might be. And what you never see happen is the con men coming clean. You never see the flim-flam man, the snake oil salesman, going in front of the mob and saying, you know what, I scammed you all. I don't have any money to give you back because I spent it, but I just wanted to let you know it was all a scam. They never do that. They never do that. It's something they can't do, because then the mob just goes apeshit, right? The mob just completely falls apart. And this is when you have the run on banks and the system collapses. So they're never going to tell you the truth. They're never going to admit to what's really going on. And they're never going to be able to fix or deliver on their promises. And then eventually the system's going to collapse because it's all an illusion. It's a scam. And it goes against the divine order of things, right? What I talk about with the heartfulness meditation. It doesn't have any backing from people's internal relationship with God. It's not a system that's backed in the divine principles. And so with that, I want to cover some stories today. But it's something for everybody to know, that the controllers don't always get what they want, the so-called elite. In fact, they suffer more disappointments than the average person. They get, they have plans that don't materialize. People are always like, oh, the elite are going to do this, the elite are going to do that. Okay, right, the elite. The elite. What do you know about the elite? Like, what do you frickin' know about the elite, right? It's just something people say in the truth community. And so instead of focusing on them, focus on the fact that the system that you're 100% dependent on is collapsing no matter what. And then what are you going to do? Again, what are the options, right? And I provide an option here that when you internalize your existence and you connect to God, and you go from depending on the system to depending on God, when everything that you have in your life comes from God, and you have some internalized dialogue or correspondence, way to communicate with God. That's the heartfulness system. The heart is developed as an instrument where God can, show you the path, show you what you need to do. Your soul, you have a relationship with your soul, and your soul communicates to you and shows you through your heart. You feel things in your heart, and you're able to use your heart as an instrument to guide you along your spiritual path and make decisions. That's the heartfulness meditation, cleaning away everything in the heart that blocks your connection to God, and being transmitted this divine energy that, emboldens your relationship with God and helps you navigate your spiritual path. And it takes a lot of work to go from your indoctrination, your programming, and your own desires, we are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement, to becoming a spiritual person and having a relationship with divinity. And it's scary for people, right? It represents a loss of control for your ego. And so your ego doesn't want to give that stuff up. But anyways, let's get into the headlines. Let's start here with Yahoo News. The Facebook post that could cost you $11,000 fine. This is Australia. And Australia wants to, just like every other country, and government now is trying to censor the internet more and more. They all talk about how bad China is with their censorship. America and other so-called democracies criticize China's censorship. But now they're all engaged in the same behaviors. They want to get rid of your ability to post things on social media. There is a prominent alternative health doctor out there that is now just announced he's leaving the internet, somebody who's been around for a while. These are things that are happening because of the COVID stuff, right? And so this is something they want to do in America, but they're having trouble doing it. But it is the signs of things to come, and I'll come back to this, But this is something that's happening. This is something that they need to get done. They need to scrub the internet of people who don't go along with the official story, that have alternative narratives to the official story. So these are going to be the morning headlines from Page 6 and New York Post, just a typical day. Emmys reportedly trying to book Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's for Hollywood debut. Jennifer Aniston cuts ties with a few people over their vaccination status. Jenna Dewan clarifies birth comments would never slam Channing Tatum. Those comments I read in the headline were, he was never around or available when she first had their baby. Kathy Griffin says her lung cancer went well, surgery went well. She has lung cancer and a number of other things, but she's just trying to get back out there and give all her fans the gift of laughter, right? Katy Perry grabs a handful of Orlando Bloom on vacation. The 2021 Met Gala will require guests to be vaccinated, masked indoors. Taylor Swift and Simone Biles exchange heartfelt tweets celebrating Olympians' return. John Corbett and Bo Derek secretly married in December after 20 years. Charlize Theron sports tiny black bikini while on yacht in Greece. Kristen Bell waits for her kids to stink before bathing them. Kylie Jenner shimmers in 24-karat gold chain bikini. Like if that isn't the apocalypse right there, right? Like these are just the apocalyptic headlines. This is from the New York Post. Tales from the creep, the women in the lurid sex harassment allegations surrounding Cuomo. Sickening selfie shows moment right after Cuomo allegedly groped assistant. Obama back at Martha's Vineyard birthday bash amid Delta variant fears. Super spreader event. New body cam video shows chaos panic after Surfside building collapse. BS sneaker controversy explodes after best race in Olympic history. That was an excellent race. That was one of the bright moments if you saw that, right? It was the men's 400-meter hurdle. It was one of the few things I saw in the Olympics that I was like, oh, that was great. Grim new details emerge in crash that killed dad and daughters and niece. And then this, Cuomo's and other liberal privileged men have finally outdone themselves. And so this is about Chris Cuomo and Matt Damon's slur controversy and Barack Obama's super spreader event. Then even the Huffington Post, right, they loved this guy. The Huffington Post loved Cuomo's. Like he had his own little section. Now they've turned on him. The walls are closing in. And then it says here, Chris Cuomo fails to even mention brother's sexual harassment scandal an hour-long show. They feature Chris Cuomo's regularly on the Huffington Post. They pimp his stuff out here. They put videos up for him. They champion him, right? Remember these two guys when Chris Cuomo was in his basement with COVID allegedly, and his brother was the hero and savior and the real president of the United States, according to many? And they were, doing their Cuomo victory dance and how great they were. And now even these liberal rags are trashing them, right? It's how quickly everything changes and fails. NBC's Tokyo Olympic ratings are plunging. Yeah, it sucks, right? There was a few good things that happened, but it's a disaster. It's like something great for me. I could do 3 or 4 hours of Olympic coverage every day about how it's apocalyptic. And then the masks are back here in the advertisements, right? Skateboarders' fall produces the most uplifting moment at the Tokyo Olympics. And so what happened was, I was just scanning through this stuff. But what I noticed was that in gymnastics, And, you know, everything is about the women in this Olympics, right? So I first saw this in gymnastics. The rival athletes, the rival gymnasts, were hugging each other. There was no sense of opponents or any of these sort of venom and competitiveness and killer instinct you'd see in normal high-level sports. And so this girl fell, and her competition, all of these, her fellow competitors, all came up and not only hugged her but lifted her up, and she didn't win anything. Like she had a fall, and they carried her off, right? So this is what competition looks like, the women-based competition in 2021. And so I'm going to come back to that, right, and talk about, but let's go with this first. Doogie Howser Reboot puts a 2021 spin on the show's classic theme song, and Doogie Howser is now a woman. Doogie Howser is no longer a dude.
Some great news for fans of the hit TV series Doogie Howser. It's getting a reboot, but with a twist.
Yeah, fans are going to be upset.
Fans will remember the original series starred Neil Patrick Harris, who played a teenage doctor just trying to figure out life between practicing medicine and getting through his adolescence. Here's what we know about the reboot. It will be similar. Again, there are a few twists. It'll be set in modern-day Hawaii, and it will be...
It'll be in Hawaii.
...called Doogie Kamealoha MD. This time, the doctor will be a 16-year-old girl. So no word yet on who will play the lead character,
But somebody will, and it'll be a girl, allegedly. And it's on Disney Plus. It's in Hawaii. And there's medicine. She's a genius. She's a genius. University of Hawaii graduate, 10-year-old prodigy. She's doing the thumb and the pinky thing. She's got sunglasses and CDs on the wall. And walking down the hall, there's Doogie. The same thing. It's just the new Disney Doogie Howser, but it's obviously, even more woke. And which one of them's Boner, right? Wasn't there a character named Boner? Which one of these guys here is Boner? We want to know who's playing Boner in the new Doogie. Is her best friend named Boner? Or Dong Hung? And so, these are the ways that woke is rebooting everything, right? And it's all, I just covered this with He-Man yesterday. And it's always worse. Not that Doogie Howser wasn't, sucky at its own level, right? And so this is something that is even more, like it's even worse. It's going to be worse than the original Doogie Howser. You're taking these horrible shows and making them worse. Like it's just, this is what's happening to our culture. Simone Biles and Taylor Swift's heartfelt exchange has everyone in tears. No, it doesn't, because I'm not in tears. And so, not everyone, right? Don't speak for me and everyone watching this video. I'm crying. How special I love you. Her voice has been significant as her talents, her honesty as beautiful as the perfection that has long been her signature. Taylor Swift 13 gets us ready to watch Simone Biles on the beam. And so she did something here. There's slow motion. Something big is going to happen here. USA.
What do we want from our heroes?
What do we want from our heroes?
What do we expect from them?
We expect them to quit and have emotional and mental difficulties so they can't perform their tasks and their jobs. That's what I say I want in a hero. I want a hero that has emotional and mental problems at the moment of the biggest pressure when they're supposed to come through. That's what I want. Like I want some, have some existential crisis when they're about to save the world. That's what I want for my heroes. It's about time I get that.
What do we need from them? What happens when they surprise us?
And that was not was planned. Just doubting herself somewhere.
When you have the attention of the world, everything you do takes on a bigger meaning.
Exactly. The pressure of the attention of the world.
It can be a heavy burden.
Nobody knows what it feels like except for Simone Biles.
It's got to be a lonely place at times.
It's a lonely place on top.
Her honesty as beautiful as the perfection that had long been her signature.
Being honest. She's honest. That's one thing.
But don't you see? It still is.
It still is, even though she isn't perfect anymore. Her honesty.
She's perfectly human.
She's perfectly human. She's a hero because she's perfectly human.
And that's what makes it so easy to call her a hero.
That's what makes it so easy to call her a hero. She's a hero. It's very easy to call her one because she's human. All humans are heroes. Remember, this is from The Incredibles, right? Where they're getting rid of superheroes because they want everyone to be special in their mediocrity, right?
Simone Biles, back on the beam.
She's back on the beam.
In Tokyo.
In Tokyo. She's a hero. She's back on the beam. She's back on the pole. No, that's Hunter Biden. That's what Hunter Biden thinks is a hero. Get back on the pole for Hunter Biden. Speaking of heroes, Brittany finally isn't posting it. She's got a pig here. A little pig. Geez, I've never seen a pig like this before. I've never shared this because it's embarrassing. I'm supposed to be a fearless performer. And she, I don't know, she's having some interaction with the pig. And so that's not what I want to read here. But this is, whoever's controlling her Instagram page, and if she's involved in this, is doing everything possible so she looks crazier and crazier. At 2 a.m., I decided to take a bath. Exclamation points. I got a new scented lotion from Victoria's Secrets, and I wanted to wear it because it helps me sleep better. I went to the bathroom and looked at my leftover coffee from earlier in the morning and said, gross, but didn't throw it away. And then I looked for my face wash, but couldn't find it anywhere. I was caught up in my head looking for it for about 15 minutes and then realized it's probably in the other bathroom. One of the many. How many bathrooms do you have, Brittany? I don't know, like 15. It could be anywhere. Then I went to leave and the door was locked. I thought, okay, it's a bathroom. I can open the damn door. No, the lock was stuck. I got locked into the effing bathroom and my boyfriend was sleeping. Even if there are earthquakes, he doesn't wake up. I screamed, hey, come open this door. Open this stupid door. She locked herself in the bathroom. She also burned down her exercise room. Silence. The fourth time he gets up and says, what's wrong? And I said, I'm in here. I can't get out. Multiple happy faces. He tried to do his thing to open the door with a pen. He tried to open a locked bathroom door with a pen. This guy's a regular frickin' MacGyver. So I got my phone and called security to tell them to open the door. 15 minutes went by, and they finally said they're going to send someone to open the door. 10 minutes later, hello, is there anybody there? Then they told me 10 more minutes. I cleaned the bathroom and thought of taking a shower or something, but then I saw the door. I just looked for it. At the first, with a yearning of just wanting it to open, would my eyes trick me and make it happen faster? My eyes widened, and the door was more clear, more vast. I could see it with clarity and brightness. Please open the door. We're here, they said. I asked how long it would have taken to open the door. They said, okay, maybe 10 minutes. The old coffee I had left over from the morning was there. I started feeling foggy, so I drank it. I was re-energized and started speaking again. Are you guys there? And yes, they were. They said, stand back. We're going to open the door. It opened. It finally opened. It's a metaphor for her conservatorship. They freed Britney for real, Miley Cyrus. You left the you left the part out of me kicking the door down and saving you. So I think this is your boyfriend. Girl has a PhD in metaphor. Sounds like a metaphor of what's happening in her life. That she locked herself in the bathroom, and now security's going to come and kick open the door, and she's going to be free from her conservatorship. You think that's what's going to happen, right? Queen of the patiently waiting for freedom, we love you, and you have a wave of people who love you and support you. A metaphor for the door finally unlocking for you. Go, Queen X. It's not a metaphor at all, right? She locked herself in the bathroom somehow because she's Britney, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. She drank some toxic coffee that had been sitting around all day. Her boyfriend was asleep at the wheel, and they needed security, and they had to kick open and break the door to free Britney. And so it's not a metaphor because she came out and she was still crazy. And this post is something that could be used to show that she's not functioning on a high level. This is actually going to hurt her cause, as all her other Instagram posts will, right? It may please their fans and the Free Britney army that they got working, but they're not responsible for getting Britney free. It's a judge, and corruption and Britney's sanity. So I saw this yesterday afternoon. This person's Cori Bush, who is a Democratic congresswoman from Missouri. And I saw this on the midday something or whatever. I think I was eating lunch. And I waited for it to come up on the internet because I knew it would. And, later on, right? And of course it did, but I actually found another earlier one from the night before.
Like that with the names on of evictions. No, that is not good enough. We are talking about the highest government of the United States of America. This is unacceptable. We have to do better by people. And the other thing is this.
So what this is about, I believe it was under Trump, they passed an eviction moratorium where landlords couldn't evict their tenants whether they are paying rent or not. And now that is going away, and Congress has left, and so she freaked out, and then she decided to do this.
People look to us because there is nobody else that can fix this. People look to us to make sure that that this is done. We can't sit around and point the finger at anybody. We have to get it done. And I think about those moments when I was unhoused, when I was sleeping out of a car and just wondering who can do something.
Well, the government, obviously, right? It's got to be the government. It can't be anybody else, that they're homeless people. And so the government has to solve everything. This is the message here.
Who can help? Like where are the real resources? Where are those that can help? Because you know what? When it's so cold outside and there, like it was pretty cold outside last night. The wind was blowing through my sleeping bag as thick as it was. I could not get warm. There was nothing I could do to get warm last night. The same thing. And it rained. That's the other thing. It was raining. The sleeping bag was wet.
So her solution is to sleep on the steps of, the Senate or whatever it is, Congress, in Washington, D.C. And she's saying it was so cold that her sleeping bag was wet and it rained that she couldn't get warm, even though, it's the summer in Washington, D.C. And so her solution, when she freaked out about this, was to sleep on the steps of the Capitol and in some sort of protest, so that people wouldn't be evicted.
This is what people live through that actually have to live on the street. So many problems, so many difficulties, so many barriers to being able to move out of that place. I will not sit by and be quiet because we want to talk about procedure and protocol and let's just do the job to make sure people are taken care of. We can go deal with court cases. We can deal with the states.
So that was the first, that was the night before. And then the next day, she was still on the steps, and is it Marsha Wallace? I don't know what her name is. Nicole Wallace had her on the next day.
How long are you going to stay on the steps?
I said from the beginning that I'm here until we have the eviction moratorium in place. So we'll see. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to the announcement from the CDC, hopefully coming up very soon.
Yeah.
And if it is what we asked for,
Once again, the CDC saves the day.
this work may be done sitting here on the steps, but the work in our communities is big. And so we have to go ahead and tackle that.
How did it? I mean, I have covered this. I've paid attention to this. I think we all knew that this deadline was coming, but you took it.
So she starts to cry here. And I think she's sincere. Like there's a choice of either she's a really great, incredible actress or she's really passionate about saving 11 million people from being evicted. There are 11 million evictions. Some of those are families. So you could have millions of families and kids on the street based in, what's happening economically because of the shutdown. And that's a real thing. And so I'm not pro-eviction. I don't think anybody really is. Don't want to see poor people and people that are struggling maybe because of no fault of their own due to what happened with COVID and them shutting down the economy and all that, right? And so the solution here, though, either she's sincere because she's very passionate about this, and I don't dislike this person. Either she's sincere or she's not. But in terms of her solution, let's watch the end of this. She starts to cry here a little bit, right? But in terms of her solution, they're leaving out a lot, which I'll get to in just a moment.
Upon yourself to not accept it, to sleep on the steps of the Capitol until it was changed. Just take me inside, your thought process and how you arrived at that.
The idea when we found out that actually Representative Ocasio-Cortez and I, when we found out that that we had been recessed and that people were already on planes, people were going on vacation, people were going back home, I couldn't understand, my brain, my heart could not understand how we leave 11 million people, how we leave 6 million families just in a place of not knowing what to do and possibly being forced out of their homes. And it's still to this moment, I can't figure that out.
See, what she's saying here, and I believe she's sincere, maybe she's an incredible actress, I don't know. But I think she's sincere. And what she's saying is that her colleagues all left, with the possibility of 11 million people and 6 million families looking at facing homelessness. And she couldn't believe they just left and, didn't try to solve this. Like this is her freaking out and realizing, I mean, she's, like I said, far from being a truther, but she's, having a reality moment that these people that she works with don't care. This is, to me, if she's telling the truth, and, I think she is, that, and whether she is or she isn't, we know that they don't care, right? That there's all these people who are about to be homeless, and that's a crisis, and would be a crisis. I mean, think about the impact on the economy and local governments and things like this. When you dump 11 million people, and more than that, because some of them are families, onto the street all at once, and then it's going to continue because of the nature of the economy, you just dump all these people onto the streets without homes, and think about how that's going to affect not only them, but everybody else. And so she's like having this moment. She's like, I don't know, why they would leave, right? Well, because they're ghouls. Like, you work with a bunch of ghouls.
And so I remember just saying, well, I have to do something. Like something has to happen. And I reached in my own toolbox. Somebody else may have done something different, but what I know to do is to put your body on the line. And so that's what I did. I said, you know what I know how to do? I know how to galvanize people. I know how to mobilize people. I know how to organize. So let me just sit here and see if I could get others to sit with me to help bring some awareness. Let's shine some light on this. People have to know that we're fighting for them and we have to be victorious.
So the problem with this is, and again, I'm not opposed to them solving this problem of all these people being homeless, but there's no money left. So first of all, you have the landlords. See, there's lots of people, and this goes to commercial real estate as well, who haven't been able to collect rent since they passed all these laws. And there's many businesses that are, they were in the toilet and they weren't able to keep up with their rent. And so you have people who own commercial real estate. And then you have other landlords. There are people that get all of their income from rental properties. And, they have to pay taxes on the properties, and that's how they are surviving. Or they get a portion of their income. And I'm not one of them, right? Like I would never be a landlord for lots of reasons. But there's lots of people who are on the landlord end that are suffering financially, and maybe they're, about to lose their properties or even be homeless themselves because they're not able to get income because there was no money for this, right? I mean, whatever money there was is gone. And so they are in a hole economically. And there might be tenants that realize they can't get evicted and they know they're going to leave. And so they're just not paying rent and saving that money. And so when they, get evicted, they're going to have a lot of money that they owe the landlords, who have to go then through small claims court and all those things, right? And so that would be a complete mess. And the government can't pay for it either. And that's everybody else paying for it. And so these are real catastrophic effects from shutting down the economy and the economy collapsing. Like, these are just some of the early telltale signs. But there's no real solution. There's no solution where, everybody gets taken care of. Because either the taxpayers, this is another whatever, so many billions of dollars to pay for rent for people. On top of all the bailout money, and we're hemorrhaging, we're going into more and more debt, right? Trillions of dollars are being dumped into the economy of money we don't have. We already owe $28 trillion in national debt, $80 trillion collectively, and then the derivatives market and all the things all the social service programs that the American government's on the hook for. I mean, just, between Social Security, Medicare, and the military, that's all of the tax revenue. The IRS collects about $3.5 trillion in taxes every year. And the budgets for the military, Medicare, and Social Security are more than that. And then, all the other governmental programs. So we're in a situation we have revolving debt. And just the interest, I showed you the national debt clock. Every minute we get another $3 million in debt, right? And so, you have people like this woman and AOC that come out and they say they're for the people. But if the economic system collapses, it's going to collapse anyway. But they don't, deal with fiscal responsibility because somebody's going to pay, right? If you don't evict these people, great, but that means the taxpayers have to bail them out. People who are already themselves suffering from the economic crisis and COVID and all these things. Or it's the landlords and property owners who are, many of them are they're getting foreclosures, and the banks and other financial institutions, I've covered this, are just buying up real estate. And so this isn't, these are not wealthy people, and you're thrusting them into poverty now. All these landlords and, people who have, small business owners and all these things, right? And so there's no solution here. Now, you can't just say, all right, I'm going to go sleep on the steps until we, make a law that you can't evict these people for longer periods of time. Yeah, well, that doesn't solve the problem. It just makes more problems. This is what I'm talking about, right? And also the feminine aspect of this, because like what we saw with Simone Biles, what we see going on with Britney, and what we saw going on with those skateboarders, and the lack of, this communal aspect to things. And I'll come back to that. But the first thing is change is coming. Change is coming and nobody can stop it. Change is always coming, but now there's going to be drastic changes. So things have been going, well, before, everything was, there would be change. Like cell phones are a change, right? Going from 4G to 5G is a change. But those are all going in one direction, right? Towards technology, towards the development of the internet. I mean, these ways that things have been changing now for a long time are all going in a consistent direction. The kind of changes that we've seen over the last 100 years are all going towards better lifestyle and, more gadgets and more tools and more technology and these things. So it's been going that way. So it doesn't feel like change, right? Computers were a big change. I mean, think about the ways things are different now, the internet, and then cell phones, right? All these things are huge changes to our way of life. And, many people didn't want to accept these or try these things, right? People resisted this kind of change. And it was all going in life's getting better and we're evolving in terms of our gadgets and things, our technology. But the changes that are about to occur are things where there's going to be drastic changes in the opposite direction to people's lifestyle, to their culture, to their social system. And we see the changes going on all the time. You turn on the Olympics, and these Olympics are different than, most Olympics. And you can see that one side is pushing their drastic change agenda. And there's been a battle between the progressive side and the Let's Make America Great Again. And it's not about the numbers. It isn't about how many people wanted Let's Make America Great Again. It was about who controls, the people that control and have the power over which agenda would be run through the American system and the global system. And so for people who are real truthers, for those of you who are, really waking up, did you get any training on how to use your mind critically thinking skills in your elementary schools or anything, even in college to a certain extent, right? Was there anything in your educational system where they taught you to think independently? And if they taught you to think independently, because I went to a college that taught critical thinking skills, and when I went against their way of thinking, I got punished for it, right? It was a college, that came out of the hippie movement I've talked about before. And when I started to talk about God and my, when I had my transformational experience of starting Heartfulness, my grades, which were A's before, went down to B's and C's or whatever it was, right? I was punished for my critical thinking discovery. And so the reason for this is that governments don't want people to be able to think critically. They don't want people to question things because your system doesn't work as well when you question things. It's not just about being evil. It's about dissenting voices and people not buying into the official narrative. And so free thinkers or independent thinkers in a society that's all about control, and that's what governments are, they're about controlling things. And some of it's good because if you remove the government and you see how people behave, you realize, oh my God, it's like, people are completely, it's not just chaos, but people make horrible, violent, crazy decisions. And so control, if you lifted the control, all the people who complain about the government, if you just lifted the government, because this happens, look at what happened in Libya when they destroyed the government. Look at all these countries that, America imposed regime change. And, even then America tried to impose a new government, right? Or the UN or whatever it was, right? The authority tried to impose a new government. And you see what happens when governments are removed. Even a bad government is better than the chaos that happens in the thug rule, the barbarian gangland rule that happens when you remove the government. So governments are about controlling people, and anybody that's going to question the status quo is going to be a problem. And you're seeing that now, right? Like people who really wake up, because lots of the people listening to this really haven't woken up yet. They're still in the right-left paradigm. They're still, thinking there's a solution, and they're still, whatever. They've retained their original belief system, and they're not changing. They're just not. And so the people who are really awake, it's a painful experience because you're just witness to it now. you really can't do anything to change it because the system's just going to go in whatever way it goes. But now you see things on a different level. That's why in the original Matrix movie, the character Cypher, I believe his name was, wanted to go back into the Matrix. He didn't like being awake because it's painful and it's just a struggle. And so people who have critical thinking skills are an enemy of the state. And that's where all of us who have sort of had some sort of awakening fall. But even more of an enemy of the state is spiritual people and saints, higher developed spiritual beings, who in, most places are persecuted. India is one of the, bright lights of them. India specifically is the best place to be a saint because in India they celebrate their saints and higher developed souls. But all around the globe they don't, right? Especially in the West and America. You see this over and over again. So if you rise up spiritually and you start taking people away from, you influence people to question their dependence on a materialistic system, that's the death knell to the system. And so they, destroy saints, even religions. I mean, religions most of all, because you're cutting in on their scam. The religions are scamming people. And so when a real spiritual person comes, even if the person's in that religion, you've seen this over and over in Christianity, where there's a saint who is killed by the religious leadership, and then later on they're like, oh, that guy was a saint, right? After he's dead and been persecuted by the religion that he was, was uplifting. And so that's the state of humanity, where free thinkers and, spiritual giants are attacked and persecuted by the controlling system because they are usurping the power of these flim-flam men, these scam artists who are controlling, not only the system, but your way of thinking and the orientation to your life. So in terms of the man-made change, right, when there's a time of change, you often have one side or the other, if you have a binary system, that tries to control the change. And we see that, what I showed you today, one aspect of this, you can see who won and who lost by how women are dominating the Olympics and the news media and all these stories. In fact, this thing that happened with Cori Bush and sleeping on the steps of the Capitol, when I turned on the news today when I was eating lunch, and I forgot all about the whole thing I taped, right? Even though I saw headlines about it this morning, I was like, oh yeah, I got to remember to use that. By the time I was making the video, I was about halfway through the editing process, and I had forgotten all about, the Cori Bush thing that I taped that I showed you earlier. But then I turned on the news, and Elizabeth Warren was running up really quickly and hugging Cori Bush. And I'm like, you see what's happened here, right? Where women have been thrust into positions of power and control, and they are the story. They're the protagonists, and if it isn't women, it's some other group, a representative of a group that's been so-called marginalized in the past, right? And so you see there are all the changes that happened when Trump was president, when he was the Make America Great Again, and so much progressive and liberal and Hollywood morality got pushed through. And we're entering into a time of change, and we see that there's, a definite winner in the battle between left and right. And the left is going to push their ideology and all these things, just like Trump and Trump supporters wanted to push their belief systems. Both are deeply flawed, and both are a big part of the problem. And whoever won, it wasn't going to make a difference because of what I showed you earlier in this video and talked about, that the system has run its course, right? Everything has a shelf life. Everything has a beginning and an end. And there are divine forces that determine such things, and divine cycles and all the rest of it. And no matter what movements are established and what things happen to try to save this system and save this way of life, it's going to be absorbed either way. It's going to be destroyed, and something new is going to rise from the ashes. And this talked about in the prophecies of the Heartfulness meditation a world with spirituality as its base. And so again, the only real solution for me, I mean, you have to figure it out for yourself, is to deepen one's connection to divinity. And the heartfulness meditation has been given for this particular time in history to reestablish people's connections to God and their soul's path and develop their heart as a modem for intelligence. See, all the solutions and all the movements that are allowed to exist out there, things that don't come from saints and don't come from people with critical thinking skills and all the rest of it, but heart-based skills even more so. All the movements and solutions that are being pitched right now come from the narrow bandwidth of acceptable official narratives within the beast. They're not looking for something outside of the controlling system. And so, that's where everyone who wants to be a part of the future has to dwell, right? Not in the sense of being a rebellious person or actively working against a system, a dying system that's collapsing, but finding a new way, right? Finding something that doesn't come from the system itself, because the system itself is like a cancer, in many ways worse than a cancer, and it's dying, like I said. And so it's something not like, socialism or communism or capitalism. Those are all things that are inside the system. They're all part of the beast, right? It's a whole new orientation and way of understanding your life. Instead of, materialistic pursuits and looking for pleasure and, all the things that go with a hedonistic, materialistic, big ego system, it's something beyond that, right? It's something where, you're connecting to God and you're reestablishing your soul's path and your soul's purpose. And you're not just having a material life, but you're also engaging in a spiritual process. And so it has to be like that kind of drastic change from the way that people are oriented right now to what they can be if they bring God into their existence. Not in a religious way, because the religions, like I've said over and over again, act as middlemen between you and God. But having a real in-depth relationship and internal connection with God and bringing that into your personal decisions and the moment-to-moment living of your life. In the heartfulness system, it's a very simple system in that, like, people used to go to Babaji and say, I'm going through such and such a thing. And he'd be like, do more cleaning. Or he had 3 answers. Do more cleaning, if he gave an answer at all. Receive a sitting, get some transmission, or practice constant remembrance, which is a trademark type of activity in the heartfulness system where you imagine God is doing things with you. It's not you doing something, but it's God doing something, right? That you think that God's doing it and not you. And you do that all day, every day for the rest of your life, that you bring God into your life in this way on a moment-to-moment basis where God is with you and present with you, and you're making the active decision to think that way. You're imagining God is there with you and performing your tasks. It's not Paul Romano who's talking, but it's God, right? God's talking through me. That's the way that you think about everything. 3 simple aspects. Either, it's almost annoying, the answers. It's either cleaning, transmission, or constant remembrance, or a combination of the 3, or all 3 of them. But those are the answers. Like, whatever you're struggling with something, go get a cleaning. Get a sitting, get some transmission. Practice constant remembrance. Those are like the 3 answers, right? But it's a profound change where you no longer are thinking in a selfish way, but you're bringing God into your existence, and you're cleaning away that everything that doesn't need to be there, that's blocking your connection to God. You're receiving this transmission that helps you feel God's presence, and then you're thinking about God on a moment-to-moment basis, that you're in partnership with God and performing your daily tasks together. And so those changes are profound, and the kind of society that will, exist when people adopt these practices will be a, radical transformation of what we're seeing now in our dying system. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs. and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.